Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, today I want to talk about something most men realize when it's almost too late. Stoic life lessons that could have made them unshakable much earlier. Pain is not your enemy, it's your teacher. Learn to sit with it, and you'll rise stronger than ever. A man who controls his emotions is more powerful than a man who conquers cities. Silence is strength. Reaction is weakness. The world doesn't need your noise. It needs your discipline. He who rushes loses himself, but the man who is still, he finds power in patience. Control what you can. Let go of what you can't. That's not giving up. That's rising above. Be the rock in the storm. Be the fire in the cold. Be the man who bends but never breaks. Time is the greatest test of all. Waste it chasing approval, and you'll die unknown to yourself. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Train your mind, and your life will follow. Stop chasing happiness. Start building character. That's the true path to peace. Today, we don't just talk about motivation. We talk about mastery. Mastery of self, mastery of mind, and mastery of moments. These are the Stoic truths, ignored by many, understood by few, but owned by the unshakable. Let's dive in. Emotions are visitors. Discipline is permanent. This is a truth often realized only after years of reacting, regretting, and repeating. In youth, we tend to believe that our feelings define us, that we are justified in every burst of anger, every wave of fear, and every collapse into sorrow. But Stoicism teaches a far more powerful reality. Emotions are not permanent residents in our lives. They are temporary guests. And like any guest, they must be acknowledged, but not handed the keys to the house. Every man has faced moments where emotions took the driver's seat, where anger led to burned bridges, where fear halted opportunities, where sadness spiraled into self-doubt. These moments feel heavy, defining, even permanent. But if you've lived long enough, you know that no emotion lasts forever. The rage that once seemed justified becomes embarrassing in hindsight. The fear that held you back becomes a story of what could have been. And the sadness that weighed you down eventually lifts, leaving you wondering why you gave it so much power. The Stoic man understands this. He does not deny emotions, nor does he suppress them. He observes them. He respects their presence, but refuses to become their slave. He feels anger, but doesn't lash out. He feels fear, but takes the step anyway. He feels pain, but does not let it poison his mindset. This is discipline, not a cold, emotionless existence, but the ability to act rightly despite the chaos within. Discipline is what remains when the fire of emotion burns out. It is the choice to show up even when you don't feel like it. It is the voice that whispers, "Do it anyway." When the mind screams for comfort, emotion says, "I'm tired." Discipline says, "Do it tired." Emotion says, "I'm afraid." Discipline says, "Do it afraid." Discipline is the anchor in a storm, the stillness in a whirlwind. the unshakable center of a life that refuses to be tossed around by temporary states. One of the biggest lessons men learn too late is that chasing emotional highs leads to emotional crashes. Seeking constant motivation, happiness, or excitement becomes a trap. Motivation fades, excitement dulls, happiness fluctuates, but discipline, built through habit, forged in routine and tested in discomfort, stays. It doesn't care how you feel. It only cares what you do. The world today glorifies feelings. Follow your heart, they say. Do what feels right. But what feels right in the moment is often wrong for the long run. The heart can be missiled. Feelings lie. Emotion says quit when things get hard. Emotion says lash out when you're disrespected. Emotion says escape when you need to face. But discipline, rooted in reason, grounded in purpose, tells the truth. It tells you to stay when it's tough, to hold your tongue when it's burning, to face what others flee from. Think of the men you admire, not for their talent, not for their charisma, but for their consistency. What separates them from others is not that they never felt weak or angry or discouraged. It's that they chose action over emotion. They trained when no one was watching. They showed up when no one clapped. They endured when it hurt. That's discipline. And that's what builds greatness. Not once in a while, but every single day. Your emotions don't have to disappear for you to be strong. You just have to stop letting them lead. Let them walk beside you, not ahead of you. You can be tired and still be consistent. You can be afraid and still take the shot. You can feel discouraged and still show up for your purpose. That is what makes a man unshakable. Not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Emotions come and go like the weather. But discipline, that's the foundation. That's what you build your life on. The man who relies on emotion is like a sailor depending on the wind, drifting, directionless. But the man with discipline is like a captain with an engine, steady, certain, and always moving forward, no matter what the storm brings. How many men look back with regret, realizing they made permanent decisions based on temporary emotions? How many relationships were broken, opportunities missed, goals abandoned, all because emotion screamed louder than purpose? But it's not too late. The shift happens when you stop asking, "How do I feel?" and start asking, "What needs to be done?" That is the mindset that separates boys from men, reactors from leaders, fragile from unshakable. Silence speaks louder than unnecessary opinions. In a world that thrives on noise, constant commentary, and the illusion of needing to be heard at all times, the true power lies in restraint, especially for men navigating through the noise of modern life. This Stoic principle is often learned too late, but once understood, it becomes a guiding force for peace, clarity, and unmatched strength. Every platform, every room, every conversation seems to demand your voice. You're told to speak up, to assert, to always have something to say. But not every thought deserves a stage, and not every opinion carries value. The wise man knows this. He recognizes that silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom wrapped in control. While others rush to prove their intelligence, their relevance, or their dominance through words, the Stoic man understands the deeper influence of silence. There's a difference between being quiet and being silent. Being quiet can come from insecurity, fear, or submission, but silence, true, intentional silence, is a decision. It is a form of power that comes from self-mastery. It's the decision to not argue with ignorance. It's the refusal to engage in battles that don't serve your mission. It's the awareness that your energy is too valuable to waste on empty words. A man who is always talking reveals his need to be noticed. A man who knows when to hold his tongue reveals his confidence. In silence, there's reflection. In reflection, there's understanding. And in understanding, there's control. Many men learn this after years of saying too much, too often, in moments where silence would have been the mark of maturity. They realize that sometimes saying less is saying more. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Think about the greatest mistakes, regrets, and conflicts in your life. How many of them were sparked by saying something that didn't need to be said? How many moments could have been saved, relationships preserved, or energy protected by simply staying silent? The tongue, when left unchecked, becomes a weapon, often pointed at others, but just as often turned inward, damaging our own progress. The world rewards noise in the short term, but history remembers the disciplined. The man who knows when to speak and when to withhold has mastered one of life's greatest arts. He doesn't argue with fools. He doesn't explain himself to those committed to misunderstanding him. He doesn't waste breath trying to control how others perceive him. He simply lives his truth, moves with purpose, and lets his actions speak the loudest. Silence is not passive. It's active stillness. It's the training ground for clarity. It's in silence that decisions are sharpened. It's in silence that anger cools. It's in silence that wisdom grows. When the world rushes to react, the Stoic man pauses, he observes, he weighs, he decides with intention, because not every situation requires a response. Not every insult requires a comeback. Not every disagreement requires your participation. The ego demands to be heard. The higher self chooses to listen. Men who operate from ego speak from impulse. They defend every comment, correct every slight, and chase validation in arguments that go nowhere. But men who operate from purpose value peace over pride. They've learned that protecting their energy is more important than proving a point. In business, in relationships, in conflict, silence has power. The silent man is underestimated, but never truly vulnerable. He doesn't expose his intentions prematurely. He doesn't reveal his plans to be dissected by lesser minds. He keeps his thoughts sharp and his words rare. And because of that, when he speaks, people listen. When he moves, people notice. His silence creates mystery, and mystery commands attention. There's also dignity in silence. Not everything needs to be broadcast. Not every opinion needs to be shared. The modern world encourages oversharing, emotions, experiences, grievances. But the Stoic man keeps sacred what others carelessly expose. He knows that privacy is a form of power, that not giving people access to every part of your mind protects your peace and guards your strength. Control of the tongue is control of the mind. And control of the mind is the foundation of every great man. The ability to pause before you speak, to reflect before you respond, and to remain grounded when others are shaking. That is the quiet confidence the world desperately lacks. It is not about silence in every moment, but the wisdom to know which moments deserve your voice. The man who learns to listen more than he speaks becomes a magnet for respect. Others begin to notice his presence, not because he dominates the room, but because he owns his space without needing to fill it with noise. He becomes the calm in chaos, the stillness in storms. He no longer seeks to be understood by everyone. He seeks only to understand himself. And that understanding gives him power that cannot be shaken. Control the inner world, and the outer world loses its power. This is one of the greatest Stoic truths, a truth most men overlook until they are deep in life's storms, wondering why everything around them feels chaotic, overwhelming, and out of control. But what they haven't yet understood is this: the external world is not the true battlefield. The war is internal. It's not the traffic, the job, the economy, the betrayal, or the rejection that defeats a man. It's his response to it all. When a man loses command of his inner world, he becomes a slave to everything outside of him. The Stoics taught that you cannot control events, only your response. That is where true power lies, because everything external is temporary, fragile, and subject to change. Money disappears, relationships shift, status fades, but your mind, if trained, can become the one constant in a world of instability. And when that happens, you're no longer just surviving. You're dominating every storm life throws at you. Most men are trained to fix the outside. They chase better jobs, better bodies, better circumstances. And while there's nothing wrong with improvement, the problem is when they try to use the outer world to heal an inner weakness. They seek validation because they haven't accepted themselves. They seek control over others because they haven't found control within. They try to silence the noise around them because they haven't learned to quiet their own thoughts. But everything external is a mirror. If your mind is at war, your life will reflect that chaos. A man who cannot control his inner world is easily provoked. One insult ruins his day. One setback breaks his focus. One loss destroys his confidence. But a man who has trained his mind, who has taken full command of his thoughts, reactions, and emotions becomes untouchable. He doesn't flinch in the face of failure. He doesn't get rattled by criticism. He doesn't collapse when plans fall apart. His calm isn't fake. It's forged. It begins with awareness. Most men go through life reacting, not realizing they've given the steering wheel of their lives to emotions, opinions, and random circumstances. They wake up and scroll, letting social media set the tone of their day. They hear bad news and spiral. They let a single person's words dictate their mood. But the Stoic man flips that script. He starts from within. He decides before the world has a say what his mindset will be. He wakes up and chooses stillness. He chooses direction. He builds a fortress in his mind that no outside force can penetrate. The mind, untrained, becomes a weapon against itself. It will create fears that don't exist, enemies that were never there, and doubts that have no basis. But a trained mind becomes a weapon for strength, clarity, and progress. Training the mind doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means interpreting reality with reason, not emotion. It means pausing before reacting. It means asking, is this within my control? If yes, act. If no, release. The man who understands this principle becomes a different breed. He no longer blames the world for his problems. He takes full ownership. He doesn't point fingers. He doesn't complain. He adapts. He endures, and he elevates. He knows that everything can be taken from him. Possessions, people, plans. But no one can touch his mind unless he hands it over. And he refuses to. When you control the inner world, anxiety loses its grip. Because anxiety feeds off uncertainty. And a man grounded in self-mastery doesn't fear the unknown. He faces it with preparation. When you control the inner world, anger becomes a tool, not a tyrant. You use it as fuel, not a fire that consumes everything around you. When you control the inner world, failure is no longer the end. It becomes feedback. It becomes fuel. The untrained man looks outside for peace, never realizing that peace is an inside job. He thinks if he could just change the job, the relationship, the city, or the people around him, everything would feel better. But even in the best circumstances, his mind will create new problems because the chaos is internal. Change your inner world and you'll carry peace into the same situations that once broke you. Life doesn't get easier. The storms don't stop. But the man who rules his inner world no longer fears them. He doesn't need perfect conditions. He doesn't need constant praise. He doesn't need everything to go right, because he has built a mind that can handle everything going wrong. His strength isn't situational. It's foundational. His power doesn't come from what he owns, but from what he commands within himself. The greatest freedom a man can have is to be unmoved by the world, because he is anchored within himself. That freedom can't be bought. It must be built. It must be earned through discipline, through awareness, through mastery of the thoughts and beliefs that shape every moment of his life. Time wasted on approval is time stolen from purpose. One of the most deceptive traps men fall into is the endless pursuit of validation, trying to be seen, liked, accepted, and praised by others. It often begins subtly in youth, shaped by schoolyard dynamics, family expectations, and social pressure. But without awareness, it becomes a pattern that steals years, energy, and clarity. Before a man knows it, he's spent decades chasing applause instead of fulfillment, molding himself into someone others approve of, while losing the man he was meant to become. The need for approval is rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being alone. But fear is a poor compass. It doesn't point you toward greatness. It points you toward comfort. And approval seeking is comfort disguised as ambition. You'll dress it up as networking, reputation building, or being liked. But underneath, it's about being accepted. And what you sacrifice for that acceptance is your authenticity, your voice, and your focus. The man who chases approval becomes a mirror reflecting what others want to see. He becomes adaptable to the point of self-erasure. He says yes when he wants to say no. He holds back when he should speak up. He follows when he's built to lead. His choices become filtered through the question, what will they think? Instead of, what's true to me? But Stoicism teaches that inner peace only arrives when we detach from the opinions of others and root ourselves in purpose. A man's purpose isn't found in applause. It's found in alignment. Alignment with his values. Alignment with his calling. Alignment with the deeper mission he was created for. But purpose is quiet. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't trend on social media. That's why it's often drowned out by the noise of approval seeking. You can't hear your own mission when you're addicted to other people's praise. And once you rely on external validation, you become easy to control. Approval becomes a leash. One tug and you're off your path, doing things you never believed in just to feel worthy. Every moment spent trying to prove yourself is a moment stolen from building yourself. The men who change the world are not the ones who chase validation. They're the ones who chase vision. They build in silence. They grow through resistance. They act not because it's popular, but because it's right. They aren't swayed by every opinion because they've already chosen their direction. They know who they are, and that knowing makes them immovable. Trying to please everyone is a game you'll never win. The target moves. The rules change. Today they applaud you. Tomorrow they cancel you. One day they love your strength. The next day they call it pride. One day they cheer your success. The next they envy it. If your identity is built on that unstable ground, your confidence will rise and fall with public opinion. But if it's built on purpose, you'll remain steady, regardless of noise. Purpose doesn't need permission. It just needs pursuit. But it requires you to disappoint some people, to walk away from certain circles, to say no when it's easier to say yes. That's why many men avoid it. They're not willing to be misunderstood. But greatness is always misunderstood at first. Every man on a mission will be called arrogant, stubborn, too quiet, too bold, too different. That's the price of clarity in a world built on conformity. And only those who detach from needing approval are willing to pay it. Men often come to this realization too late. After living years of people pleasing, they look around and see a life that doesn't reflect their true self. They feel successful yet empty, respected but not known, productive but unfulfilled. Because even if you gain the world's approval, you'll lose your soul if you've abandoned your calling. The cost of approval is too high when it comes at the expense of authenticity. The most dangerous voice isn't the critic on the outside. It's the inner voice that's been trained to seek acceptance over purpose. That voice must be silenced, reprogrammed through solitude, reflection, and truth. The man who can sit with himself in silence and still feel worthy, that is a man who has reclaimed his power. He no longer needs applause to feel enough. He no longer measures his worth by how many people agree with him. He moves from conviction, not consensus. The world doesn't need more men chasing attention. It needs men anchored in purpose. Men who know why they're here and don't need a crowd to confirm it. Men who understand that a quiet life rooted in truth is more powerful than a loud life chasing praise. When you let go of approval, you gain something far greater: freedom. Freedom to choose your path. Freedom to make mistakes without shame. Freedom to be consistent even when unnoticed. That kind of man becomes unshakable, not because the world always supports him, but because he no longer needs it to. Pain is not punishment, it's preparation. For most men, pain is seen as something to avoid, escape, or numb. It's rarely welcomed, never invited, and almost always misunderstood. Yet pain, when looked at through the eyes of wisdom, reveals itself as one of the greatest teachers life offers. It strips away illusions, exposes weakness, tests character, and sharpens strength. But society has conditioned men to believe that pain is a sign of failure, weakness, or punishment, when in reality it is the fire in which greatness is forged. Pain prepares a man for the weight of real responsibility. It breaks him only to build him back stronger. It humbles him so pride doesn't destroy him later. It wounds him so he learns how to heal, how to endure, and how to lead others through their own darkness. No man becomes unshakable without first learning how to stand inside the fire of pain without running, complaining, or collapsing. Pain demands presence. It brings a man face to face with who he really is when no one's watching. There are truths about yourself you will never learn in comfort. Growth doesn't happen when everything is easy. It happens when everything is tested. And pain is the ultimate test. It asks, who are you without the applause? Who are you when everything falls apart? Who are you when you've got nothing left but your character? These are the questions pain forces you to answer. And how you answer them determines the man you become. The modern world teaches men to escape pain through distraction, addiction, denial. But Stoicism teaches men to face it, to learn from it, to let it do its work. The Stoic does not seek pain, but he does not fear it either. He understands that on the other side of pain is power, that every wound carries a lesson, and every trial has the potential to become a tool. If you run from pain, you run from growth. If you embrace it, you unlock a depth of resilience no comfort can give. Pain is a revealer. It reveals what you really believe. It reveals who you can count on. It reveals whether your values are theory or truth. It's easy to say you're disciplined when life is smooth. It's easy to say you're faithful when everything's working. But pain strips the surface and shows the roots. And for the man who is willing to stay grounded during pain, those roots go deep. Deeper than circumstance, deeper than doubt, deeper than fear. Most men look back on painful seasons and realize they were necessary. That the heartbreak, the loss, the failure, the silence, those were the moments that shifted everything. Not because the pain itself was good, but because the man he became, because of it, was better, stronger, more focused. Sometimes life has to break your heart to save your soul. Sometimes the lesson can't be learned until it hurts enough to change you. Pain is not personal, it's universal. Every man will face it. The difference lies in how he responds. The weak man becomes bitter. The untrained man becomes reckless. But the stoic man becomes refined. He channels the pain. He doesn't waste it. He lets it mold him into someone sharper, someone more grounded, someone more dangerous in the right ways. Pain becomes his forge, not his failure. There's no shortcut through pain. You can try to avoid it, but it will catch up. You can try to numb it, but it will resurface. The only way out is through the tears, through the loneliness, through the confusion. And in that process, a man is either made or he quits. That's why most don't make it to greatness. It costs more than comfort is willing to pay. Pain also gives perspective. It reminds you what truly matters. It makes you appreciate peace. It makes you value the simple, real things: health, time, loyalty, purpose. The man who has never hurt deeply is often the man who takes life for granted. But the man who has suffered and stayed standing sees the world differently. He moves with intention. He speaks with weight. He walks with quiet power. You don't grow by avoiding hard things. You grow by surviving them, enduring them, learning from them. That's why pain is preparation. It prepares your mind to be disciplined. It prepares your heart to be compassionate. It prepares your hands to build something that lasts. It prepares your spirit to lead without ego. The fire you go through today is shaping the man you need to be tomorrow. And maybe the pain you're in right now isn't meant to destroy you, but to prepare you for something greater, to make you stronger than you thought you could be, to show you what you're truly made of. Because comfort may keep you safe, but pain is what builds your capacity, not just to survive, but to carry purpose, vision, and the weight of a life that actually means something. Peace isn't found, it's forged through hardship. Many men spend their lives chasing peace as if it's some distant destination that will appear when everything finally settles. They think peace will come with more money, less stress, the right relationship, or a perfect situation. But peace doesn't show up when life gets easier. Peace is created in the middle of difficulty. It's not handed to you. It's built by you through discipline, perspective, and inner strength developed in the storm, not outside of it. True peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of unshakable focus in the midst of them. It's the ability to stay calm when chaos surrounds you, to stay steady when plans fall apart, to stay grounded when emotions rise. And that kind of peace doesn't come from comfort. It comes from having been tested, pressed, broken, and still choosing to rise. The man who has walked through hardship and didn't quit has earned a level of calm the comfortable will never understand. The pursuit of comfort often leads to anxiety because life will never give you permanent ease. There's always something, some pressure, some challenge, some unexpected detour. But the man who's been through enough to stop expecting ease is the man who finds strength. He doesn't demand the world be gentle. He trains himself to be resilient. He doesn't wait for the noise to stop. He builds a mindset that stays quiet within, even when the outside world is loud. Peace forged through hardship carries weight. It's not a surface level calm that disappears the moment things go wrong. It's the kind of peace that has scars. The kind that comes from sleepless nights, silent battles, private struggles that no one clapped for. The kind of peace that's rooted in reality, not fantasy. You don't get that from wishing. You get it from enduring, from walking through fire and not letting it turn your heart cold. Hardship reveals the difference between shallow peace and deep peace. Shallow peace depends on everything going right. Deep peace doesn't care what's going on. It stays. It's not blind optimism or fake positivity. It's a trained response to difficulty. It's knowing that even when things are hard, you are not undone. That even when it hurts, you are still anchored. That even when you don't know how it ends, you trust the process because you've been here before and you've made it through. Every man who has achieved inner peace has paid for it. He has faced loss, disappointment, failure, and doubt. He has been betrayed, forgotten, underestimated. And through all of it, he didn't let bitterness win. He didn't let fear take over. He didn't let the world change who he was at his core. That's what makes his peace real. That's what makes it untouchable. Because it's not dependent on what happens outside. It's built from what's been conquered inside. Hardship gives a man clarity. It strips away the unimportant. It shows him who he can trust, what truly matters, and what's just noise. In hardship, your priorities get sharpened. The things you once obsessed over lose their grip, and the things that last, purpose, discipline, faith, integrity, become your foundation. That clarity brings peace, because you're no longer pulled in 100 directions. You know who you are. You know what you're here for. And you're no longer distracted by things that used to steal your focus. The peace that's forged through hardship also brings humility. It reminds you that you're not invincible, that no matter how strong you become, life can still shake you, and that humility keeps you grounded. It keeps your ego in check. It keeps you connected to others who are struggling, because you remember what it feels like. The most peaceful men are often the most compassionate, because their strength was earned through pain, not privilege. Forged peace is sustainable. It doesn't vanish when pressure hits. It doesn't crumble under criticism. It's built on perspective, not perfection. It says, I've been through worse and I'm still here. It says, I know who I am, and no outside circumstance can steal that from me. That kind of peace is rare, and it's not taught in comfort. It's learned in the battlefield of life, where everything is uncertain, and the only thing you can control is how you carry yourself. If you want lasting peace, stop searching for the perfect season and start building unshakable character. Start doing the hard things. Start facing the stuff you've been avoiding. Because every challenge you walk through with intention makes you stronger, clearer, calmer. That's how peace is forged, by becoming the kind of man who can handle anything without losing himself. The storms don't stop, but you stop being moved by them. You stop letting every difficulty shake your confidence. You stop needing life to be easy to feel okay. Because the peace within you isn't fragile. It's been tested, it's been refined, and it's become a part of who you are.